So, Peter, lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Simon, and well, thanks everybody for joining as well. Much appreciated to have you attend this session.
That's great. And, it feels like you've packed in an awful lot of experiences into your lifetime. You've worked through telecoms, mobile music, sustainability, adventure and travel. In fact, I just bought your book about adventure and travel, and I see a copy of it behind you.
Yes, indeed.
The tricky bit, no doubt we'll explore that a bit, but it's just lovely to have you here. So what sparked your first step into entrepreneurship? What got you going on your journey?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. It was really, I was in a company that was acquired by Sun Microsystems, I don't know, 35, 40 years ago, a long time ago. But I remember vividly Scott McNeely was the founder of Sun Microsystems. And I remember him coming into our office and talking to us. And he said, "Well, I've just acquired Interactive Systems Corporation. I'm very pleased that you're all part of the Sun family, and I'm really entrusting you to be Sunsoft for Europe." So there was a group of 20 people all of a sudden thrown into this opportunity, really, to be Sun's division of Europe, software division of Europe, which was the main structure of the company. It was the strategic direction of the company as well. So really, really important and interesting. And Scott said four things that were really very, very interesting at the time. I remember them to this day, 35 years later. The first of them was the success of Sun is directly proportional to its rate of change. So the faster we change, the more successful we'll be. Now, that was driven from the fact that DECVAX was a competitor, IBM with its mainframes was a competitor, HP with HPUX was a competitor, very large, a very difficult company. Sun was a very much younger company and very much more adaptable. And it was the change that Scott said is our differentiator. That's what's going to make us successful. And that sort of message, I think, is still true today. If you're starting up a new business, what's your differentiator? It's the fact that you can change. You can listen to customers and change and change and change again. And that's really, really key. And it stuck with me for a long time. The other thing he said was, you know what, I'm going to fire 10% of employees every year, board down. So we're going to literally fire them. And that was a shock. We're a little British company, and this big American company was coming over and acquiring us and going, well, you're all, 10% of you are not going to be here very shortly. And so that was kind of interesting. And at the time, I didn't really understand it. But as I've driven businesses in the past few years, I've kind of realized that actually it's a very important feature. You can't have somebody who's negative in a business or who really tries to drive it. So it's really important to my strategy is to bring everybody on board as much as I can. But at the same time, if people really aren't coming on board, you do have to let them go and to move the company forward. Otherwise, the company grinds to a halt. It's really only a few people will cause it to do that. Another thing he said was, you know what, 10% of the best people, I'm going to take on an exotic holiday with their partners. And the board will get to know every single one of them, and we will understand what you think we should do to change for the next thing. So really empowering thing, and something that I felt was really key. We could give our input to Sun, this huge company that we were a part of, to make a difference, to make a change. So we felt empowered, and that was a really important thing. And the fourth thing he said was really key, was we're going to have fun. We're going to kick butt and we're going to have fun. So have a great time at Sun. But we're going to work hard, and that was a really fascinating thing, and it led me to believe that this thing about entrepreneurship, that's great. And I found myself really getting excited, then going over to America and then sitting in Ed Zander's office, going, you know what, Ed, I think we should do an object reality center initiative, and it's going to cost you $2 million, but it's a good thing to do, right? Because we'll bring the developers on the account, drive the strategy for Sun through companies building and driving applications on the Sun platform and Java. The Object Reality Center initiative became the Java Center initiative. We drove that out, and it was really successful. And it's that bringing these companies on board, having these companies really drive a successful exit. So Valtech came on board, it drove a successful exit. And I was sat there going, just a minute, I'm an employee of Sun. That's great, but all these companies that I'm helping become millionaires were driving their own business. I'm sure I can do that. So that was really the first trigger for that.
Yeah, it's a great trigger, and I think Peter was talking about fun being a central part to his experience. And I think for me, like you, the so-called energy vampires is the name I gave to these negative people. These people that drag people down, they need to be got rid of. Or you can get a stake and you could drive it through their heart. All right, now it's up to you, depending on HR policy, but you just need to deal with those people and support the good people with all sorts of incentives like holidays. So, that's a good learn. And I want to hopefully give people a chance to take actions from this discussion. Perhaps you could write down 3 things, listening to Peter, that you want to do with your entrepreneurial journey. But that would be an action certainly that I've implemented over my 40 years of running businesses. So Opera Telecom and Omnifone, ahead of their time in terms of music content, mobile content and music. What did you see that others didn't see? How do you find that vision and convince people to follow it? Peter, what's your tips and hints there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that really is similar in almost every business I've been involved in and driven is the fact that I've identified a business opportunity. So I've come up with a plan. Lots of people come up with ideas, but it's an opportunity that's scaled by using technology. So it's a platform that you can use to drive scale. And for me, if you have a business idea and you have a platform that scales it, and a great operational team and sales team to make it happen, PR and marketing clearly important to drive it out. But they're 2 of the key features that differentiate all of the that are common in all of the companies that I've driven, with the exception of a couple of them which are different businesses altogether. But that's a common feature, and I think that even today is a really great way to differentiate your business. Create a platform, create a differentiator, embody the idea of your business in that platform, and then when you display it or present it to your customers, they get it. They understand what it is, and then you can drive it out quickly, rather than having a difficult conversation about an idea. This is a real thing, it's a real platform, it's a real product, and this is what it does for your business. And all of the propositions that we've had do that. And ideally, if the business idea is a differentiated proposition, so it's not something that everybody else is doing, it's something that takes it to the next level. We integrate products together. We create a platform for doing something different in the telecoms industry, or doing something different in the music industry. And that's adding value and doing things differently around a proposition, and then scaling it really quickly internationally. That's all of those things are common to all the companies I think I've had.
It seems to link back to what you were saying before about dealing with change. You're obviously somebody who likes and adapts well to change. You drive change in your teams. Tricky bits, though. You've got that book, The Tricky Bit, behind you, available on all good bookshops, including Amazon, $9.99. I've just bought my copy. But what was the toughest challenge you faced, do you think, when you look back on your journey? What are the things that you've found really difficult to get through? Those walls exist. You either have to go around them or go over them or go under them. How do you deal with challenge and the tricky bits in business?
The tricky bits in business you have to manage directly yourself. The tricky bit in the book is something slightly different. We can talk about that a bit, but there's a lot of tricky bits in business, and when you're scaling fast companies, I could go on for hours on this one, but it is operational scale. Salesman's gone out and sold to a big company, and suddenly we're delivering internationally for Sony in 26 different countries in 20 different languages, and I'm sat there goes, whoa, just a minute, how we're a little British company, how do we do that? Operational scale to meet the sales requirement is something that I've enjoyed doing, but has been one of the biggest challenges. Selling to big companies and being a relatively small company in the UK has its cash flow challenges. So managing and driving and maintaining cash flow whilst you're building the biggest system for the biggest companies. They are slow in signing contracts, and you getting the money in is a slow business, and you've got to run a payroll. You've got to build the platform. So I remember lots and lots of months where we were sat around the boardroom 24/7, trying to get the next bit of money to pay the staff, and so there's lots of tricky challenges when you're running a business to do that. And then in telecoms companies, I mean, in managing a switch, we had a switch that we managed and a computer data center which we manage. We're going back quite a few years now, and it's really no joke. I remember the CTO ringing me up and saying, you know what, we've been hacked. We've got somebody who's come in and hacked our switch, and by the way, I've managed to fix it. I've managed to get him out, but it's been in 1 hour, and we've lost £30,000 in that 1 hour. And he said, you know, if we hadn't caught it in 8 hours, we would have been out of business. Literally, the scale of the fraud would have been such that we would have had to close the business down. So this is a real challenge. I mean, I can go on. At 2:30 one morning, we had a power failure on the switch, and my phone bleeped on the side of my bed saying, "Oh, the power's failed to the switch. Three-phase power's gone. What are you going to do?" And so I was ringing around everybody at 2:30 in the morning, trying to get somebody up, and nobody was responding. It was an hour and a half drive for me to go to Birmingham. So I jumped in my car, drove to Birmingham, grabbed a can of diesel, and was sat there at 4 o'clock in the morning, topping the generator up with diesel to keep it going. And you know, what am I doing? I'm the CEO of a telecoms company, right? I'm there topping this thing up with diesel. And I think it really goes to prove that actually the CEO really does carry the can in these instances, right? Lots and lots of stories, you know.
It's great, these stories, and I think you look back on them, you think, well, you're adaptable, you deal with change, you grasp the opportunity. All those things are clear opportunities for everybody who's listening today. But what about that 2:30 in the morning? Do you keep your phone on now at 2:30? I mean, that's an interesting thing.
No, Simon. It was because I was the CEO of a telecoms company. I knew we had our own data center, and I knew that if the switch went down, we would be out of business. I mean, it was literally that bad. And so being the CEO, along with the CTO and everybody else, we had our phones on and we had to respond. But I was the only one responding at that particular time.
It's interesting, this balance for entrepreneurs and for everybody, really. I mean, balance is an important word, isn't it? That you address the right areas at the right time. You don't get too exhausted. How do you deal with that, Peter, when you've got these change events taking place and you're planning and taking things forward with a vision and you've got a team? How do you personally deal with the stress for your family or for yourself? Any hints or tips around that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that there's a lot in this making the company happy, you know, working with people who are happy, keeping them happy. Going out fun at Sun events was something that Scott McNeely drove at Sun Microsystems. Get everybody talking to each other. Keep a friendly communication going. Pay for these events, you know, get the different departments talking to each other. And I think if you get a happy feeling within the company, then a lot of the stress goes away because you're not worried about people, and then everybody's backing you up. They're helping you. So you don't feel, a lot of CEOs feel like, oh, I'm on my own. This is it. I'm driving it. But if you're actually driving it with people who are working closely with you, then that's really key. The other thing I did was I always employed mostly a woman who was working really closely with me, and then she would be my eyes and ears. You know, Peter, you've overstepped the mark there, or Peter, you've done that, or by the way, the content delivery people are sat in the basement and they hate it. You know, we need to swap them out or do something. So in other words, when there was a challenge, there was somebody to talk to, and then we could bash ideas off and then go, okay, that's what we can do. And then they could execute it. And that was really, really important as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so. It's good to have people there that sort of check and balance what you're doing. And I followed with my business. We became a top 100 business to work in. We followed something called the Happy Manifesto, a book, very simple book that we shared. And that gave everybody that common vision, that common teamwork. And I think that's a really interesting approach. Adventure and passion, your cycling trip. Let's sort of wrap that together then. How did you, first of all, go into this cycling journey? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting one. Our son came back from university, and he said to me and my wife, he said, you know what, Mum and Dad, I want to cycle around the world. And we thought, well, this is great, but why don't you avoid the dangerous countries? And he was going, no, I'm going to cycle through the dangerous countries. And then my wife had this brilliant idea, which was I should cycle with him through
Great
those
idea.
dangerous countries, which I took as an opportunity. Why not? Well, why not? Let's go cycle and have a go. And I was working. We'd set up Carbon Statement a couple of years before that. It was running quite nicely. It was driving a good income, and so I could actually take a couple of months off. The other directors didn't like it, but I just went, well, this is a chance of a lifetime. I'm going to do it. So we went to Kyrgyzstan with my bike and met my son there, and we cycled in through China, the weaker populated bit of China. We went over the Karakoram highway, over the Himalayas, passed into Pakistan, down through Pakistan, and I flew back from India. But what an experience of doing that. And I did it really just because it was a really good opportunity for me. But interestingly enough, I mean, I wrote the book because we had such fantastic experiences, mostly people related experiences. People were very friendly and they would take you in. We weren't a threat. We stayed with some great people in Pakistan and China on the way through. So, but the interesting thing, writing the book, I thought, well, I'll just write a book for my friends and family. It'll be fine. But a very good friend of mine, a guy called Peter Henry, is the ex-marketing director of British Gas. And he said to me, he read my book and he said to me, Peter, what you don't realize about your book is that it is your brand. It's your brand. It's what you stand for. It's your values. It makes a big difference to you. And that's really what you should, in business, get your book. And I didn't really realize that. And I said, Peter, you're having me on. This surely isn't that important. But I had an opportunity of sitting at the boardroom of Amazon Prime Video. In fact, we were selling one of the products only a couple of years ago. And there was 16 people around this boardroom, and I plugged my computer in at the end. The chief was sat next to me, and up on the screen flashed my home screen, which was that picture on the front of my book. Really, it was us cycling across to Pakistan. And the chief stopped me. He said, go back to that picture. Go back to that picture," before I'd started the presentation. And he looked at the picture. He said, "Where's that?" I said, "It's the border between Pakistan and China, 4,732 meters." And it turned out that he had cycled that very same route. Now, very few people have done that. And he came and he said, I was on it. So I handed him a copy of my book. I said, "There we are. That's it." And what he said to me next was really, really interesting. He said, "You've got the technology to deliver on our £12 billion live Thursday night football matches. But I now have the confidence that you're going to deliver that. I like you as a person. I like what you've done. And I'm going to walk out of this meeting knowing that you're going to deliver for us." And I was shocked. That was a surprise. But it's the value of doing those things, right?
It really is. And we're going to share at the end some links. Somebody shared your link to your book within chat facility, was great. But we're going to share links to your website where you can get a better feel for Peter, the things he's done and the things he's looking to do in the future. But please feel free to put questions into the chat box so that Francis, who facilitates in about 10 minutes those questions, can see what they are. Peter, you're sharing some amazing stories. What about sustainability? So you've done some work around two businesses in music and telecoms. Tell us what then happens.
Yeah, sure. There was the government brought out CRC tax, carbon reduction commitment tax, which was very significant. And I was interested by this because I felt it was a business proposition, very straightforward. And it was a business proposition for companies who were using a lot of energy, and especially those who were making very little profit. And that category of companies is very much the hospitality sector. So if you have the hospitality sector, Wetherspoons has got a £50 million, or had at the time £50 million spend on energy, and this was a new tax. And we were going to calculate the CRC tax for Wetherspoons at the time. So we did that, and I remember clearly sitting in the boardroom with Tim Martin and a few others, and then we explained this is the CRC tax, and this is what you're gonna have to face. And you can imagine Tim jumping out of his chair and running around the boardroom going, "The government's stealing off me again," right? So there was this feeling that somebody's stealing off his business. But I was prepared for that, because what I said was that we can actually reduce your energy use by 10%. I guarantee we'll reduce your energy use by 10%. If we take a percentage of the profits. We started at 50%, but we disappeared rather dramatically from that. But it was a percentage of the change that we could generate in his business that was the opportunity. Anyway, Tim agreed. He said, "Yep, if you can do that, I'm not going to pay you a penny unless you do 10% or more. But you do 10%, I'll happily give you a percentage." And that was great. So that's what started Carbon Statement as a business proposition. And then we took that same proposition to lots and lots of different companies in the sector. We built the hospitality carbon reduction commitment and the forum around that. All the sector got together every quarter. We talked about the initiatives that were sustainability, the P45 initiative, as I call it, the one that failed, the sustainability initiative that actually failed, and everybody would talk about their initiative that failed to stop everybody else doing that sort of initiative. So there was this community that built up around that, and it all went really quite well. But there's an angle on that where Costa Coffee, I presented that proposition to Costa Coffee saying, you know what, we can save you 80 million. You've got an 80 million pound energy bill. We can save you 8 million a year in the first year. And they thought about it for a while, and they came back to me, interestingly enough, and said, Peter, you know what, I really like what you're doing, but it's nothing to do with saving energy. It's nothing to do with carbon. I like the propositions, but that's not why we're buying your proposition. We're going to buy your proposition because guess what? We're a coffee shop. We've got people with degrees pouring coffee, and we need to maintain them. We're worried about churn. So our biggest value add that you're going to offer us is having this proposition for energy managers in all of our coffee shops who can take responsibility, talk to each other, build a value for themselves, put the green coffee bean on their lapel so they feel like they're really doing something. And we as a business can work out which of them are any good or not for the bigger management positions in the company. And that's worth much more than £8 million a year. So we sold it to Costa Coffee, but interesting little story, right?
It is interesting. And it's this idea of retaining people within any business. You've got to show that vision, find the right people, get rid of the people that aren't strong enough and lead them forward. And obviously that's what they were trying to do with their green coffee bean, I could imagine. And I think the other thing that comes across for me there is celebrating mistakes or learning from mistakes. You know, as you go through change, you're going to make mistakes. How do you then share those in a place where it's safe so other people don't make them? I think that's something that's for me really important about any entrepreneur. So 4 minutes to go before we get the questions. Please dump the questions in the chat box. Wisdom and reflection is this the next part. Your younger self sitting there at Sun Microsystems, what would you have done and said to yourself at that stage to get even more from your career when you look back? You might be young people here today who are thinking of setting up a business or early stages. What sort of big picture messages would you have been saying to yourself? Perhaps not in terms of revenue, because I know you've helped to build hundreds of £1 million of income, but other aspects as well.
Sure, yeah, no, great question, actually. And I would think, and I would encourage everybody to have confidence in your assessment of opportunities and people. It's very tough as you're a young person in business and you're trying to listen to everybody else, but actually have confidence in your assessment of opportunities and people. I think that's really key. And talk about it, you know, actually bring forward your ideas. You know, generally you're better than you think. You know, people keep a lot of information in themselves, and I think that they really have confidence and should really rely on that. So if you're going to set up a business, you know, have confidence that that business is an opportunity, and get the right people to go with you and feel that they're the right people. Don't take anybody who's not, and then just go for it. You know, have confidence in your delivery and make it work. You know, and don't worry about changing direction. You know, if you're going to change direction, no problem. I mean, I left Opera Telecom when it was the fastest growing company in the UK, right? You know, we got an 87 million valuation from Deloitte and an offer from 3i to buy it. And the guys wanted to carry on running the business. I went, no, this is the time to get out, right? So a good entrepreneur, I think, knows when to start a business, but also when to get out. And I think that's a really key value things. And I've been fortunate enough to follow my instincts, but they were often brave decisions, and don't be worried about brave decisions.
Yeah, you live your life, live it well. And what about mentoring? Did you have you talked about working with Rob Verchich earlier when we spoke a few days ago. What about mentors? I mean, any views on mentors? Have you had people that have supported you through those challenging times?
I've never had mentors myself, although I've known a lot of really, really great people. I met some amazing people at Sun who I didn't call them mentors, but I learned a lot from them. And I think learning a lot from people around in business is really key, really important, and a really good
Yeah.
opportunity. And I remember most of those lessons. So yeah, I think mentorship is a good thing, and use the people around you, and don't necessarily feel you have to pay for it. I mean, I feel a
Yeah.
lot of people are prepared, and I help loads of companies now for free. I'm just help them. I like to see businesses grow and be successful.
I think that's an interesting about the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists. It's an environment of about 700-800 people who are happy to share around the industry, around charity. And I think they want to share questions, opportunities, and that team and networking, including drinking down the pub local to the hall in Barbican, is a way of finding a community of people that you can relate to. And I think, there's a chance to follow up after this for those people who are new to the WCIT, if you want to. So looking back on all this change and all these decisions, you've just created an amazing range of businesses and, massive pat in the back. And I know you wanted to make sure that you didn't come across as too arrogant. And I think you've come across as enthusiastic, very humble, and somebody who wants to make a difference. So what's next? What's the journey over the next sort of period of time for you look like?
I mean, the first thing I would say is that I think the rate of change of things is increasing. The rate of opportunity is therefore also increasing. So there's a really big opportunity for anybody today to get and start a business and make it successful. I'm really happy to be involved in some of them. I'm involved in lots of different companies now. Agenda Scope, who has a platform for governance of companies, and just signed a big deal with an insurance company, directors and officers insurance company. So they're off to the races and going to move forward. Dr. Leah Lee of 0 Point Motion, I helped to set that company up 4 or 5 years ago. They develop a chip which is driven by light and is it's inertial sensing, one of the 1,000 times more sensitive than the MEMS chips in your phones today, and is going to be key in automated driving vehicles and in satellites and probably in your PDAs in a few years to stop your little dot when you're looking to navigate your Google Maps from spinning off. That's to do with the MEMS chip not understanding what it's doing. So lots and lots of really interesting companies involved in. Perhaps the biggest one, though, is a company called Hitomi Broadcast. And Hitomi have developed, they've been running 10 years. They've developed a good platform for quality of video streaming in the top companies. So Formula One and the Olympics broadcasting, BBC, ITV, Sky, you name it, all they're in all of them. And now I'm helping them move into the new area of broadcasting, which is streaming. You'll all know television sort of really getting less and less. Streaming is getting big. I mean, that's the conversation with Amazon Prime Video. It's also the conversation with Netflix and with Sky and with almost all the big broadcasting companies. They're all going to move into streaming services. So making that company really successful and driving the next hurdle for those, and building that company as a non-exec, I don't want to do exec anymore, but that's really interesting, and I think that's the whole thing, is that it's a dynamic opportunity for lots of people.
Yeah, it is. Lots of energy, Peter. Fantastic. Maybe a cycle ride as well. I'm just going to read to the people here something which really inspired me, which you wrote to me about your talk. Starting, growing and running a business really should be fun. It should be one of those things that gets you up in the morning to see your ideas come to life, to make a difference, to engage teams and to deliver positive change. It's not just about the money. It's about enjoying a life and doing what you want to do. As a nation, we really have everything important for business success. We have grit, determination, education, entrepreneurial spirit. That inspired me, and I think you've inspired a lot of people here today, Peter. So let's just move on to Francis asking any questions that come through chat. What sort of things are coming through, Francis?
I'm not seeing any question yet, so please, everybody, if you have a question, now's the time to share it. But I've written, number one, Peter, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. But whilst people are posing questions, I've written about 10 myself. So I'll start with the first one. You spoke a lot about ideas. How you got team members to, especially the top 10%, to share ideas. What can you share some action points that we can take away? Smaller businesses. How do we start the process? How can we measure it? How can we encourage people? Because a lot of people are shy to suggest good suggestions.
Yeah, I think the key for me with starting a business is you have a business idea, and then you try and bring it to life. You go talk to people about, hey, how about this? Like we did with Wetherspoons. We tipped up on and had an introduction to the boardroom when we had an idea, and I think that I would really encourage everybody to actually take the idea out there. I do hear a lot of people who said, if only I have some money, if only I have some people, if only I had access to this. So it's always excuses, and I don't feel there is a need to have excuses. Get on there and have a look. Get your idea, talk to people about it, start making it happen, and try and find a way of getting your first income. If somebody buys what you're saying and they're going to pay for it, then your idea is valid. So prove your idea right early on if you can.
And also, this is why I enjoy the panel, since I've been on the member panel now for 2 years or so. And it's a brilliant place to share ideas, from the beginning end. But my point was more about internal staff, so what process did you use from an internal perspective? Did you use like an ideas box, or how do you get people to actually put their ideas in and share them openly?
Really with people that I trusted to get the idea off the ground. So okay. so for instance, music station. For the Omniphone, that we changed the music industry. People were looking at records and CDs, and then all of a sudden digital music came along, and Napster with its MP3 free to everybody was going to destroy the music industry. So having an idea about how could we fix that. And it was about talking to people in the music industry, understanding what their pain was. And then that's where the idea came from. And then once you've got the idea, sure, share it with lots of people and talk about it. I don't think there's any danger with sharing your idea. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to tell you my idea because it's secret. No. Don't worry. Share your idea and get it, and be the first to drive it out, make it happen. Don't worry about getting people's opinions on it.
I couldn't agree more. So now the questions are starting to come in thick and fast here, which is great. So the first one is, what is your advice for female entrepreneurs to navigate the ever-changing investor landscape? And that's from Hashini, if I pronounce it correctly.
Oh, well, that's a great question, and the finance area is something I could talk for hours on, and I'm not very fond of the way that we do finance in the UK. And what I would say is I've encouraged Leah Lee, as I talked about in 0 Point Motion, also Wendy DeVolder, when years ago at Sun she was running Valtech's system, and I helped her set up. In fact, I invested in Skills Matter, and I was an advisor for that for 20 years, and we built that company. So yeah, sure, there's great female entrepreneurs, and I really, really encourage them to drive it and talk to people like me that can help you do that. But don't worry too much about the money. With Wendy, I said, well, we haven't got much money. How could we set up in the Barbican and have a 100-seat auditorium and 4 training companies, but without paying them any money? And they went, and we did a deal for 4 months for free. Right, so we weren't going to pay a single penny until we were earning money then, and I got a 6-month break clause. So if things didn't really work out, we could pull out at 6 months and not lose much money. And I think if you're open with what you're doing as a business, don't think you've got to get money. Feel that there's a way of doing it and starting a business and making it happen. It's not true for some businesses. Some bit like the chip business, you need to have a lot of money to get going and that sort of thing. That's slightly different. Navigating the financial components for that is challenging, and there's a big risk, and they take risk. And if they feel you're a risk, then you're not going to get a good deal. And it's managing and maintaining that risk, which is the big thing. But really encourage people to get active and try and do it yourself. If you can, don't worry. Borrow money off people that know you and your business. Don't worry about trying to get big financial companies or institutions off the ground. Once you've got your business established and you're in control of it, guess what? Everybody wants to lend you money, right? Everybody's after you. They're throwing money at me for Opera Telecom and Omnifone, but it was too late. I didn't need money. People will throw money at you when you need it, and they won't when you don't need it. It's an ironic situation.
Yeah, that's life. Okay, let me get you onto the next one, Peter. So Richard has asked. He's saying many entrepreneurs are outrageously optimistic. He said he is so, but I have always relied heavily on a colleague who, by their nature, are pessimistic. Financial directors, for example. Could you talk a bit about the balance between caution and risk?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm cautious about business plans always. Financial people always say, "Can you give me a three-year business plan?" Honestly, setting up Opera Telecom, I had no idea what we were going to do in 3 years' time. We actually exceeded any expectation, and I think that the reality is, if you can look in the short term, how could I make my first amount of money? How can I then grow it to the next one? If I did that for the sector, how would that grow? Keep it real and keep it deliverable, and talk to people in the business. They're going, if I had this proposition, would you buy it? Get some real feedback on the proposition rather than trying to go, oh, we can take 1% of that market. That's really going to work. Nobody's going to buy into a percentage of the market type of proposition.
Yeah, it makes me think about the 10%, firing the 10% and getting rid of the people that's trying to keep you back. But let me carry on to the next question. This is from Matthew. It says, Peter, how quickly do you think AI and robotics will be adopted globally? Do you think Silicon Valley underestimates the manufacturing, political, and deployment challenges? And how concerned are you about AI safety?
Whoa, big question, and one that's going to take a lot longer to answer than this call. But in short, I'm very optimistic about AI. I really like it when you use carefully in a business. I'm using it in Milbotics is a company that's doing smart socks, and we're doing analysis of people's behaviors and then identifying stress. And so used very carefully, we're using it to build applications in Hitomi. It's really, really, really good, and it will get a lot better. It's a little bit scary because it knows such a lot more than you think it does about business. So I would want to be careful about it. And yes, it's going to be challenging for some jobs, but I'm very optimistic overall. And it's part of this, as I was saying, everything is growing and changing really quickly. AI creates a really big opportunity, but don't just go, I've got AI, you've got data, I'll put them together and make a business proposition. That doesn't work. If you say, I've got AI in this particular instance and it can do this particular thing, and here's the business advantage, then you've got a business proposition. And I think using AI in your business proposition to create real value and then demonstrating and deploying the real value and not worrying about whether it's AI or not. Is the value there.
Great advice. Okay, how much time do we have left, Simon? Because I've got
one more question. One more question, but I've just put into the chat facility some of the links through to the WCIT, through to the Entrepreneurs Panel, to Peter's LinkedIn profile. So if people want to cut and paste that out as we wrap up in the next 2 minutes, then you can do that and follow up with actions. We've got a great entrepreneur joining us on the 27th of March. Same time, the guy who founded eBookers, quite a successful exit, massive company. So we're giving you more information on that in the next month. But please, let's have a last question, Francis.
Okay, our last question is from Jose. He says, my question, in your experience, if an idea has a strong initial interest, but users fail to take core action, how do you distinguish between a weak value proposition and a trust or execute problem with a product itself?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but how do you understand, how you differentiate between a weak proposition and a strong proposition that has value, right?
Yeah.
I would say test it. Like the Costa Coffee example. I had no clue why Costa Coffee wanted to buy our product and completely missold it. So talking to the company about what the proposition is, getting them to say, yes, I want to buy it. I would pay money for that, and then trying to test it with getting some money for that. And that's your acid test. If people are prepared to put money down for your proposition, it's a good one. If it's just an idea, I mean, I've had lots of ideas, lots and lots of them. I can, local airports, let's build local airports and local flights from there. And I'm going, well, that's great. Oh, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to build a database of all that information and show how good it is. No, start with one airport. Start with who will use planes at that airport, and then build a proposition. Then talk to people about, if I had an airplane at Oxford Airport, would you, Mr. F1 person, use it to fly where you're going or not? I've proven the case. I'm not spending all my time developing a database of useless information, in fact.
Yeah. Great point.
What's come across to me, Francis, that's brilliant. Thank you for those questions. Is the enthusiasm and drive and passion that Peter's got. Now, an entrepreneur that doesn't have that is going to be a challenge. So I think you've really demonstrated today that character that you have. And I'm going to pick the last sentence from what you sent me. All we really need is confidence, encouragement, support, tenacity to go out there and bring ideas to life. It's so creative being an entrepreneur, but the confidence, the encouragement, the support and tenacity, these are things that may be worth thinking about, reading around, connecting to people who are confident, tenacious people, following them, finding out how they get their positive energy. I hope you've really enjoyed today. I've really enjoyed meeting Peter properly. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. It's been great. Resilience, Peter, thank you. It's been great to meet you, Peter, and thank you for sharing your entrepreneur's journey. Please feel free to connect to all the people there with that statement in the chat facility, and join us again for the 27th of March. Have a great day, and thanks again, Peter.